what tends to happen is that when we see these examples, like with Pastor Brian, we see the examples like the John Grays and like the Carl Lentzes, these ministers who they're not just popular ministers, but then they transition over and begin hanging with celebrities. I was booked earlier this year or late last year. I was booked at Tyrese's house, Tyrese Gibson, the singer slash actor. And when I went to his house, I was booked there. He had a bunch of celebrities there, a bunch of Instagram, thotties, models, and stuff were there. And who else do I see there? I see Pastor John Gray there. Now, some people might not know Pastor John Gray. I guess he's Tyrese's mentor, which I think, oh, this is great. This is cool. Pastor John Gray was there. His wife was also there, which I thought was phenomenal. But listen, y'all, I'll just say it this way. I am a young man and I'm single. And I'm very comfortable, probably too comfortable in certain environments that are not conducive to my walk with God. But I will tell y'all, I had to leave. Once I finished performing, I got up out of there. I even had a homeboy there with me who's also a man of God. And I still was like, yo, bro, I'm out. This is too much for me. It's too much. Now, people were not dressed crazy, or I don't want to say anything like that, but it was a pajama party. Women were wearing pajamas. It was just too much for me. So I had to bounce. I had to dip. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm very impressed as to how strong Pastor John Gray is. He must be very, very strong to be around all of those women and seemingly not be tempted. Like, man, he must be very strong. And then literally a couple weeks after that, things started coming out about infidelity within his marriage and so on and so forth. And I don't dig into these things. I don't dig into these things. But what was interesting to me, the reason why I was bringing this up is because there seems to be a lack, not seems to be, there is a lack of accountability with many of these rock star ministers where they become very successful. And I can't say I can't say they don't have any accountability because people are very quick to put their mouths on ministers and say what's happening in their life. So I can't say they don't have accountability, but they are not submitting to accountability. And furthermore, they are not being sat down when these things happen, especially when things happen in multiple occasions. Obviously, we all know Pastor Carl Lentz, or former Pastor Carl Lentz, was sat down from Hillsong Church. But unfortunately, what was discovered is that he was sat down after it blew up and everyone found out. He was not sat down when this was going on because the situation had actually been going on with him cheating on his wife for quite some time, unfortunately. And he wasn't sat down until the public found out about it. Again, I'm not coming for Hillsong Church. That's not the goal at all. I think Hillsong Church is a great ministry. They have their flaws like every other ministry. Nevertheless, this is an ongoing thing that happens where these rock star ministers fall into sin, and then they're constantly sinning, or things are constantly going on, like a Pastor Jamal Bryant, who has a huge backdrop of sin. And because of that, now this alleged stuff that's going on in his life is now calling people to question him. It's because of this that people are looking at the church crazy. They're looking at us as believers crazy. And we've all seen it. It gives weight to people to make accusations against the church. Even the Bible talks about making sure that we're living in such a way that we are not allowing the Gentiles to blaspheme against our God. All right. Okay, there we go. We back popping. Yeah. So it's causing, the Bible talks about living in such a way that the Gentiles are not able to blaspheme against our God. And that is what we see constantly happening. So these ministers, it's really important that we have accountability. Now, how does this matter? How does this apply to you? How does this apply to us? This applies because oftentimes we do this thing where we believe the more successful we become, the less people can check us. The more popping I am, you can't tell me what to do, what not to do if I'm popping and you're not popping as much as I'm popping because you just hating. Now you just hating on me. You can't tell me nothing. I know a pastor and his wife. I'm not going to say any names or anything like that because at that point it would just be me gossiping or me sharing news or sharing information. There's a pastor and his wife who I know where I remember they started off so humble, and it was before they became super successful. other ministers, other people, leaders at their church, friends of theirs, were able to correct them. They took heed to when people said, hey, you're doing a little bit too much of this, you're doing a little bit of too much of that. Hey, y'all are veering on sin. Y'all are kind of doing some manipulative things. They took heed. But as their success began to grow, so also did their ego. And so also what shrank was their ability to submit to other people, their ability to listen to others when others were saying, hey, you're in sin or you're doing something wrong. Instead of them taking heed, they would remove people out of leadership or they would cut those people off. And they were taking it in as if, no, y'all just, they just hating. They just don't, they're jealous. They don't like the success that's happening. And this is something that we as believers should be careful of. Whether you are a pastor or whether you are starting a ministry, whether you have a platform on social media, or if you are someone where you are, you started a business and people know you're a believer or they don't know you're a believer. Either way, it is very important, very vital that we have people in our lives that can check us. And more often than not, it should be someone who doesn't benefit from your success. The reason why we say that is because when people can benefit from your success, it now incentivizes them to not say anything. They also can become disillusioned or snatched away with the allure of popularity, success, fame. So what do we do with this? We need to make sure that, one, obviously we are praying for these people, whether it's the Pastor Jamal Bryant's. And I also pray for him because, look, I've done a lot of foolishness in my life too. I have made the gospel look shameful. I've made God look shameful in many different ways before I've had to repent, and I had to go and repent to others. So I am not sitting here looking at any of these ministers as if they're such an embarrassment or so disgusting. But these ministers do need to be called out and they need to step down. They need to repent. They need to take time away from what they're doing. But unfortunately, no one is able to set these pastors down. No one is able to make a John Gray sit down. No one is able to make a Pastor Bryant sit down. Again, because, Carl Lentz was able to be sat down because he wasn't over that ministry. But a lot of these ministers where they founded the church, they just move as if they can just verbally repent. And let's say, for argument's sake, maybe they did repent in their lifestyle as well. But there needs to be a season of just pulling back. The church is still there. It's not going to go away. Most of the people are still going to be there. They're not going to go away. If anything, it's healthy. It's healthy to pull back, for people to see you to pull back, and they know you've taken a season to really work and deal with yourself. It gives a season of refreshing and healing where people are able to embrace you when you come back and you step back into the limelight. So a few different things that I want to also point out with a Pastor Bryant, and this is something all of us can learn from, is that one of the arguments, if anyone saw the video, y'all let me know in the chat if you actually saw the video where he came out and spoke about it. He addressed the rumors, and he said a few things that I thought were very solid. He did address the fact that the video that aired, that interview happened months ago. It happened probably earlier this year. And that's what usually happens. We know how reality TV, or we know how TV works in general. They shoot it. There's the editing process. We don't see it until 3 to 9 months later. So even the arguments that are made about the whole situation with him, he's like, man, that was way back then. Something that he said was, he said he was single at the time, but he was single. So the woman isn't a mistress. And I'm not trying to get too much into the details, but what ended up happening, if you watch the video with him, he addresses the woman who shared that he and her were talking. He addresses her in some very humiliating ways. He calls out the fact that her career is sucking, and he's like, oh, your book sucked and this sucked. And he didn't use the word suck, for clarity. But he used very degrading language. He used language that was meant to undermine and demean her, as if it was cool. they were posting some of the quotes where, on the show, one of the women said, "Oh, I have receipts." He said in the video, he said, "You might have receipts, but I have the cash register." And there were a bunch of other quotes and things he said. He said, "Don't come for me." He didn't say unless I sent for you, but he kept making different statements that were meant to be these little soundbite cute quotes. And yeah, they were. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was very petty. It was very petty. It was extremely petty. And I was looking at it like, man, my heart was really. I'm like, bro, this is whack. This is very whack. And so he's being very petty. I see, Brittany. You said I saw it, and I agree. He has some valid points, but he mostly did not behave like a man of God. Yeah, exactly. So again, he had some good points. Him addressing the fact, yo, I'm single. I was single. But then him going in on the woman. And again, his points were valid. Clearly, this woman who came out about him was trying to get a story. She's just seeking success. But instead of him just saying that, he went the extra mile to attack her character, attack her lack of success. And he was mentioning text messages. And again, he didn't show text messages, which he was saying these things, but we don't know if they're true or not, because one woman actually had a binder of text messages, whereas he was just saying things. But one of the things he was saying is that he was mentioning, he said, yeah, remember the time you said you wanted to see me in Atlanta, and I told you no, you couldn't come. Yeah, remember the other time that you wanted me to hook you up on some show and I didn't do it for you? Yeah. He kept mentioning things to try to like basically embarrass her. And to see, not just to see him do that, but to see other Christians reposting the things he said as if it was cool, or like as if we're celebrating pettiness. Yeah, he was very defensive. And again, I understand. I've had people come for me. Shoot, if y'all look in my comment section enough, you will probably see at times where I teeter on the side of pettiness. And that's something I also am working on. So again, I want to be careful. I'm not looking at him or looking at anyone as if like I have it all together. We are just looking at things as believers to see, yo, is there anything in this that you might be dealing with, that I might be dealing with? And that, yes, we need to call these ministers out, but we also need to be looking at ourselves, because the difference is that my platform is not the level of a Jamal Bryant's platform, but that doesn't mean that I might not do the same things. It's important that all of us are working on these things. All of us are working on these things. But as a leader, as a pastor, there is a certain level of reproach that the Bible talks about. The Bible talks about living above reproach. There are requirements that's mentioned both in Timothy, both in Timothy and I believe in Peter, where it talks about like the requirements of ministers and of pastors. And so it's very important that we're not getting sucked into what he clearly is getting sucked into, what a lot of these ministers get sucked into when they're living this rock star lifestyle, where a lot of their close friends and people they're clicked up with are worldly secular people, where their success is driven off of their pettiness and off of, them clapping back. We have to be careful to not be so closely tethered to those people that now we're living like them, thinking like them, talking like them, and no longer talking, living, and thinking like Christ. But what we